In the third section on leadership, I will be discussing about the path goal theory of leadership, and then further we will be discussing about contemporary views of leadership. So, moving first with the House's path goal leadership theory. The path goal theory of leadership has been proposed by House, which builds from Ohio State studies and the expectancy theory of motivation. This theory says that leader provides followers with information, support and resources to help them achieve their goals. Leaders clarify the path to the workers' goals. So, what is important is the goal is important, but as well as the workers need to be told the path through which they can attain the goal. So, leaders can display multiple leadership style while supervising the subordinates. There are 4 types of leadership style mostly adopted, that is the directive leadership style, supportive leadership style, participative and achievement oriented leadership style. Directive leadership style focuses on the task or the work which has to be accomplished, the goal which is to be accomplished. Supportive leadership style focuses on well-being of a worker, that is the relationship with the worker. Their focus is on giving comfort to the worker. The worker's well-being is the prime concern. Participative leaders, they consult with employees in decision making, they take their opinion, they seek their views, considering that the subordinate is also equally able to participate in the discussion. Achievement oriented leaders set tough goals, challenging goals, or the goals which will need extra effort to reach those challenging goals. So, path goal theory of leadership, there are 2 classes of contingency variables. There are 2 classes of contingency variables, what is environmental and which is something which is internal. So, environmental factors are outside of employee's control. The environmental variables which are not within the control of an employee. Subordinate factors are internal to employee, that means the subordinate's behavior. So, the situation is there are environmental factors like task structure, authority and work group, and the subordinate related contingency factors are locus of control, experience of individual subordinates, perceived ability of the subordinate. So, leaders behavior, whether directive leadership style, achievement oriented leadership style, participative and supportive, what type of leadership style will be exercised by the leader and what will be the outcome, and how these leadership style will lead the leaders to achieve the goal or leaders to help subordinates achieve the goal will vary on certain situations or the certain contingent variables, situational variables. Some variables are the environmental variables which will not be within the control of the leader, and certain variables which are specific to the subordinate, which will to some extent be within the control of the leader. So, what we would be learning here is the path goal model of leadership. It emphasizes on 4 types of leader behavior, the leadership style, that is directive, which focuses on the work to be done, supportive, which emphasizes on well-being of the worker, participative, which takes views of subordinates in decision making, and achievement oriented, which sets challenging goals. And the effectiveness of the leadership style will depend on 2 contingent factors, the environmental variables and the subordinate specific variables. What are the environmental variables? Environmental variables are mostly task structure, how is the task organized, formal authority, what is the relationship within the organization, the reporting relationship, the formal structure within the organization, and what is the nature of the work group. The second one is the subordinate related variables or contingency variables, that is locus of control, experience of the subordinates and perceived ability of the subordinate. And this theory determines the outcome of the subordinates, that is good pay, job security. It determines the outcome subordinates wants. Here we have discussed about the outcome or performance or satisfaction of the subordinates. So, a leader is considered to be effective in a situation when he is having or when he is able to achieve the goals, or the performance is effective when the subordinates are satisfied with him during the while executing the task. So, the entire the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of a leader depends on certain situations. The emphasis of path goal theory of leadership is leader of course helps subordinates to reach the task or to reach the goal, but the path that the leader adopts is very important during the exercising the leadership style. And the path goal theory, the path goal guidelines for an effective leader. Who is an effective leader depends on the outcome subordinates want, that is subordinate satisfaction is determined on the basis of the compensation they receive, the security in the job they are given, interesting work or the say meaningfulness of the work, and autonomy to do one's job. How much autonomy is given to the subordinate? So, the effectiveness depends on satisfaction of subordinate, which is determined by the salary or the good pay, the security given to the person in the task or in the job security, interesting work, how much is the work interesting, and autonomy to do one's job. Reward individuals with their desired outcomes when they perform well. Be very clear with expectations. Let individuals know what they need to do to receive the rewards. That means, while assigning the task to the subordinate, the leader has to spell very clearly to the subordinate what is supposed to be done by them. So, the path need to be well defined, their the task structure, responsibilities need to be very clearly discussed with the subordinate, and what they need to do. So, they need to exercise these activities in order to receive rewards. The path to the goal should be very clear or distinct. Remove barriers that prevent high performance. So, leaders should also try to provide an environment where there are no hassles, or the barriers to performance should be removed so that the performance can be effective. And the third factor is express confidence that individuals have the ability to perform well. So, in the path goal theory of leadership, the leader can be effective or leader can exercise effectiveness or adopt different styles, but the purpose is leader should help the subordinate to achieve goals, and they should also look at, the focus should also be on the well-being of the subordinates, on the satisfaction of the subordinates. So, they should very clearly explain what are the tasks being given to them, what is their individual responsibility, what are the qualities being qualities to be performed, quality of performance to be given importance, and they should also tell them very clearly about the procedures and policies or rules to be followed. Then the path goal theory of leadership style, as we discussed earlier, directive, supportive, participative and achievement oriented. What is the directive leadership style? The directive leaders, they inform their subordinates about the expectation and they also guide them. Supportive leaders, they are friendly, they are approachable and they show concern for the status, well-being and the need of the subordinate. Their focus is, the prime concern of the supportive leaders is to look after the satisfaction of the subordinates. Participative leaders, their focus is to consult with subordinates, solicit their suggestions, take suggestions and views into consideration while taking decisions. So, they emphasize on development of subordinates. Participative leaders, they include the voices or opinion of subordinates. So, subordinates feel more confident. They, when they hear that the leader is taking their opinion, they are willing to cooperate, they are also willing to give their ideas or contribute their ideas. So, in a way it gives them a sense of inner satisfaction. Achievement oriented leaders are those who set challenging goals, expect subordinates to perform at the highest level, continuously seek improvement in performance, has confidence in highest motivation of employees. So, achievement oriented leaders, their focus is on challenging nature of task, giving goals or setting goals which will in a way improve the standards of performance. Their expectation about subordinates is higher performance, continuous improvement in performance, and they have the confidence in highest motivation of employees. Path goal theory of leadership emphasizes that leaders' behavior, that is directive, achievement oriented, participative and supportive, will be most effective in certain situations where there are environmental variables like task structure, well defined, formal authority and systems, and the work group. These are environmental variables, and subordinate related variables like locus of control, the experience and perceived ability of the subordinates are within the control of the leader. So, the outcome would be highly satisfying, the performance would be very high. Next, I will discuss about the substitutes and neutralizers for leadership. In certain situations, when the characteristics of individuals are, when the experience and training, professionalism, indifference towards rewards, what would be the effect on leadership? Say for example, experience and training, then which will be substitute for task oriented leadership. Say when the subordinates are not experienced, when they need training, so subordinate substitute would be the task oriented leaders. Leaders should adopt a task oriented leadership style. Professionalism, when the individual subordinates are highly professionals. So, the focus of the leader should be relationship orientation and also task oriented leadership style. Indifference to rewards, when the subordinate is completely not motivated by rewards. So, what should be the leadership style? When the subordinate cannot be motivated by the reward. So, it neutralizes relationship orientation and task oriented leadership behavior. The second factor is characteristics of job or nature of the task. When the task is highly structured, the substitute for task oriented leadership style, highly structured task effect on leadership is, there should be substitute for task oriented leadership style. When the job itself provides feedback, the substitute, it should be substitute for task oriented leadership style. When the characteristic, the job is intrinsically satisfying, so it should be substitute for relationship oriented leadership style. When the organizational characteristics like explicit formalized goals, so it is a substitute for task oriented leadership style. When there are rigid rules and procedures, it is again substitute for task oriented leadership style, because the rules and regulations are well defined. Cohesive work group, when there is a cohesion among work group, that is a good understanding between the employees, when there is an effective relationship between the subordinates. Subordinates have a rapport, so the leader should not have relationship orientation. Relationship orientation is not required, because the cohesiveness between work group, so they can share the nature of responsibilities, as well as they can have a very good rapport, they can have a good understanding. So, there is trust within the subordinate. So, the leader should not be task oriented or relationship oriented. Moving further to have a discussion on contemporary views of leadership, I will focus on transformational and transactional leadership style, charismatic and authentic leadership style, and a self leadership. First one is transactional and transformational leadership style. Who is a transactional leader? Who is a transformational leader? Let us first understand the difference. Transaction means exchange, identifies what subordinates need to do to achieve objective. So, these leaders clarify organizational roles and tasks, set up an organizational structure, reward performance, and are considerate for the social needs of followers. Whereas transformational means development. Transformational leaders, their focus is not exchange, but their focus is on development. They articulate a vision and inspire followers. They have the capacity to motivate, shape the organizational culture. So, their focus is on shaping the future of the subordinates, shaping the organizational culture, creating a climate which is favorable for organizational change. Leadership model broadly transaction and transformational approaches. Transaction, as the very name goes on, exchange of benefits. So, transactional leaders, their approach is mostly laissez-faire, management by exception and contingent reward. Transformational approaches are individualized consideration. Their focus is on shaping the behavior of individuals or employees, individualized consideration, intellectual stimulation, inspirational motivation and idealized influence. Transformational leaders and transactional leaders. Transformational leaders inspire followers to transcend their self-interest for the good of the organizations. So, their focus is mostly to help subordinates shun their selfish goals for the organizational common good or organizational welfare. Transactional, as the very name says, contingent, their focus is on reward, exchange of rewards, exchange of benefits, management by exception, management and laissez-faire. So, let us look at the idealized, the transformational behavior, that is transformational leadership style, idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation and individualized consideration. The elements of transformational leaders. Transformational leaders are able to set out a bold vision. They give a challenging task to subordinate or a challenging goal for subordinate. Leaders are skilled at intellectual and emotional capability. They know that these leaders are skilled at marshalling the intellectual and emotional equity of their people. They intellectually motivate subordinates and help in emotional development of subordinates. They understand, they empathize the needs of subordinates and they make them confident. They help in improving the decision making ability of the subordinates. These leaders they give individualized consideration, that is, they give attention to the individual subordinates needs, individualized consideration to the individuals, to the subordinates. The transformational leaders encourage intelligence to allow constructive argument. These transformational leaders encourage subordinates to intellectually develop their analytical skills for constructive arguments, to take better decisions, and they also believe in imperative for trans-institutionalization. Transformational leaders are willing to move away from conventional roles. Issues with transformational leaders. Basis for action is transformational leaders work by encouraging followers to be more innovative, creative and by providing ambitious goals. So, they set challenging goals for subordinates, they keep on motivating them, they give them training so that they can take up difficult or challenging assignments. So, they try to hone the creative ability of the individuals, they make them innovative so that they can think something out of the box. So, they encourage out of the box thinking, out of the box thinking or imaginative capability of subordinates, imaginative ability or capability of subordinates. So, by giving them challenging tasks, they can encourage them to develop their capability. Evaluation based on the research, this theory does not show high correlation with desired outcomes. The style of leadership can be, so there is no correlationship with the desired outcome. The objective of transformational leader is to develop subordinates, but not necessarily it will lead to an outcome as aspired by the leader. So, this theory of leadership can be taught. So, the emphasis of this theory is these abilities can be developed in the subordinates by giving them training. Transformational versus charismatic leadership style, they are almost similar in concept, but transformational leaders may be considered as a broader concept than charismatic leadership style. Instrument based testing shows the measures to be roughly equivalent, or we can compare and contrast the characteristics of transactional and transformational leaders in more details. Who are transformational leaders and how they are different from the transactional leaders? Transaction is, the purpose of transaction is on exchange of benefits. So, this is based on the premise that if a leader wants a task to be done. So, if the follower is able to exercise or complete the assignment, so he will be rewarded. If and the leader has given a task to a subordinate and the subordinate is not able to perform, so there will also be equally reprimanded. So, reward or no reward, or reward or punishment structure, or carrot and stick policy is adopted by the transactional leaders. The very premise of this leadership style is exchange of benefits. When comparing with the transformational leadership, the focus is on development of subordinates with no reward. There is no aspiration for getting a reward or something in return. So, let us move with the objective of transactional leadership style. Contingent reward contracts exchange of rewards for effort, promises rewards for good performance, recognizes achievements or accomplishments. Management by exception means it watches and searches for deviations from the rules and standards, takes corrective actions if there is a deviation from the organizational rules and procedures or standards. The strategy is intervenes only if standards are not met. Active strategy is to take a corrective action when the standards are not adopted, and the passive strategy adopted by the leader is leader intervenes only if the standards are not met, otherwise the leader does not intervene. So, management by exception is also one of the important points covered under the transactional leadership style. The third point is laissez-faire, abdicates responsibility, completely gives up the responsibility, avoids making decision and lets the followers perform, and the leader assumes that the followers are able enough to take decisions, they are trained. So, the leader only provides a kind of liaison with the external environment and provides information if and when required. Moving further to the transformational leadership style, idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation and individualized consideration are the four important variables defining the construct of transformational leadership. What is idealized influence? Provides vision and a sense of mission to the followers, instills pride and gains respect and trust. Provides vision. A person can be motivated if there is a clear guidelines, if there is a vision or a goal being assigned. A sense of mission or purpose. So, if there is a purpose well defined, then the person can be motivated, or the subordinate can meet that goal. Purpose or goal should be well defined. Instills a sense of pride among the subordinate. So, transformational leaders' objective is to develop subordinates by instilling pride or a sense of belongingness, respect. So, he develops a kind of positivity and which gains respect and trust in the mutual relationship. Inspiration communicates high expectations, standards, and uses symbols to focus on efforts, expresses important issues simply. The transformational leader inspires subordinates through his by giving some higher standards, higher expectations, and symbols to focus efforts, and so the person feels inspired. He also inspires through his knowledge, power, or through his expertise, so that subordinates can perform as per the expectations, as per the standards which have been envisioned by the transformational leader. Intellectual stimulation again emphasizes on promoting intelligence, creativity, innovation, problem solving skills of the subordinates. So, intellectual stimulation basically is how to develop subordinates decision making skills, intellectual capability, their creativity skills, they can say problem solving skills, so that in future they are ready to take up additional responsibilities of organizations. So, the focus is mostly to develop subordinates. The last point is individualized consideration. The transformational leader would be guiding or would have several subordinates in his reporting relationship, but those subordinates, each of them have some strengths and weaknesses. So, the focus of the transformational leader is to give individualized considerations, taking view or taking cognizance of the strengths and weaknesses of individuals or the subordinates. So, they give personal attention, advise, coach people to develop their ability so that they are future ready. So, moving to the next point, that is charismatic leadership style. Apart from the transformational transactional leadership style, we move towards the charismatic leadership style. Charismatic leadership style is based on the House's charismatic leadership theory. Followers make attributes of heroic or extraordinary leadership abilities when they observe certain behavior. So, 4 characteristics of charismatic leadership is the leaders have a vision, they are willing to take personal risks to achieve the vision, they are sensitive to followers' needs, exhibit behavior that are out of ordinary, traits and personality are treated to charisma, people can be trained to exhibit charismatic behavior. So, charismatic leadership, the followers make attributions of extraordinary leadership ability when they observe certain behavior, like the characteristics of charismatic leader, they have a vision, they give a well defined vision to the subordinates, they are willing to take risk to achieve the vision, and they are sensitive to the needs of the followers, they are very empathetic, they are emotionally intelligent, they step into the shoes of the followers to understand their needs, their motivational levels, how to motivate subordinates. Each individual's needs would be different. So, they exhibit behavior that is out of ordinary. Their traits and personalities are very similar to the charismatic leader, and people can be trained to exhibit charismatic behavior. So, charisma means gift in Greek. In charismatic leadership based on unconventional behavior of the leader, extraordinary vision, and they take personal risk, and their sensitivity to followers. These are the 4 important characteristics of charismatic leader. they have a vision, they exhibit or they take personal risk, sensitivity to followers and unconventional behavior. How do charismatic leaders influence followers? Through their articulating vision, they create a vision statement which is very clear and can be easily communicated to subordinates. And subordinates are so that they can understand the vision. The vision is not abstract, but it is clear and consistent. Then they create a new set of values, certain values which will be guiding employees' performance, values to guide performance. So, they demonstrate the vision, so they can influence subordinates. How charismatic leaders influence followers? A 4-step process: leader articulates an attractive vision or a vision statement, a formal long term strategy to attain the goals, a complete strategy which links past, present and future of the past, present and future. Leader communicates high performance expectations and confidence in the follower's ability. Leader conveys a new set of values by setting examples, and they also engage in emotional inducing or emotional enhancement of subordinates and often unconventional behavior to demonstrate convictions about the vision. So, they have a strong sense of belief or conviction and confidence about the vision. Charismatic leadership issues which we will be discussing is importance of vision, must be inspirational, they must be able to inspire, motivate subordinates, value centric, realizable and given with superior imaginary and they must be articulative. Charismatic leaders' effectiveness and situation. Charisma works when the follower's task has an ideological component, there is a ideological component and there is a lot of stress and uncertainty in the environment. The leader is at the upper level of the organization, followers have a low level of self-esteem and self-worth. Dark side of charismatic leadership style is ego driven. Charismatic leaders allow their self-interest and personal goals to override organizational goals. So, beyond charismatic leader or level 5 leaders, we will be discussing very effective leaders who possess the 4 typical leadership traits: individual competency, team skills, managerial competence, ability to stimulate others to high performance, plus one critical new trait, that is a blend of personal humility and professional will. Personal ego needs are focused towards building a great company, take the responsibility of failure and give credit to others for the success. So, what we have learnt here is we discussed about transformational, transactional leadership, then we also discussed about charismatic leadership style, who the leader can envision, articulate a vision, create a vision statement, create a new set of values and demonstrate the vision. Thank you.